Let's go live. Dang it. There we go. All right. There we go. Hey, everyone. We are once again hopping on from the computer to the IG, to the computer, which is going to Facebook and YouTube, to the phone, which is on IG. What's up, everybody? Hope you all are having a good night. Just getting set up here. Thank y'all for the brief adjustment to the time, because we got jobs out here. We got jobs and lives out here. I know that's what I'm going to do. So just wait a couple seconds for, we'll give it a minute or two. Just the best number. And see what the people are up here and saying. Boom. Yep. All right. So 6:31. Yeah, we'll give it one more minute. One more minute. Actually, let's do this. Let's just go ahead and get on this here. Gotta get connected. That's not right. It's fine. We'll go back to it. All right. Okay. Yeah, give me a second. Last time I wasn't able to see everybody when they were commenting. And it doesn't look like the comments are going through. Well, it's going through to my YouTube. I don't think my Facebook. Hey, everyone. All right. Hope there's not too any feedback. If there is, y'all just let me know. So, and just here on here. And this will get posted later. So if anybody's unable to hop on live right now, that's totally okay. We will post it at the end. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back. For anyone who doesn't know, if you're watching this and you don't know me, my name is Manny Lloyd. I am a wrong thing. I am a spring 2017 alumni of the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. Sorry, y'all. Again, I'm trying to get on all the platforms. Spring 2017 graduate of University of North Carolina at Wilmington, and a Seahawk and Sankofa bird through and through, who just feels very passionately about a lot of the changes that have gone on at UNCW surrounding their cultural centers. We'll kind of go over that, a brief overview, because we went over that last time. And if you've been paying attention, you will know kind of what's been happening. So yeah, say hey to me on IG if you can't get on Facebook or YouTube. If you can't get on IG, hit me up on Facebook and YouTube. So yeah, we're gonna start out with this is kind of a part 2 what we did a couple weeks ago. We're gonna go over a little bit of a welcome, a timeline, the policy itself that everyone's kind of referring back to, what it's looked like across the state, what the general community has been told, what has happened since we last convened, and what has not happened since we last convened. Just to give folks a little bit of an update and make sure everyone is clear cut on what is going on out here in these streets. So very, very, very brief timeline. And for, I guess I'll set it up for those of you who may not know or just starting to get attached to all this. UNCW has removed all the staff members except for one from each of their cultural centers in their system, in their student affairs office, which previously was in the OIDI, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And we'll get into specifically what that looks like right here. So again, I'm going into this kind of with an assumption that folks kind of have an idea of what's happening. But if you don't, we'll try to go over that in questions if you have any questions. So make sure we're ready to go here. Yep. All right. So April 17th, the UNC System Board of Governors University Governance Committee passed a new policy recommendation. This was a recommendation to get rid of the requirement that all DEI offices had to exist at UNC Systems. This is what really kind of was the spark that led the ball rolling to everything. This was April 17th that this committee passed this new policy. Now, for it to be in effect, the Board of Governors had to vote on that, and they would go on to vote on that in their May meeting. April 20th is the earliest known date that the directors of UNCW's identity centers created a proposal to keep center staff in place in a new administrative unit. So the cultural center directors and our cultural and identity center directors, within 48 hours, came together, saw what the recommendation was, looked at what was happening around the state, looked at who was on the Board of Governors, and decided we need to come up with a plan on our own. They did this on their own. This was not at the direction of the chief diversity officer or the president or the chancellor. They came up with this policy. So on that Monday, they presented this policy that was known as BEACH. I'm aware of this because at the time of everything that was going on, I'm a former staff member, so I had some familiarity with everyone who was working in the office. I was familiar with just about everyone who was in those offices. So, I was checking in with them because, again, I worked there for 4 years and I was a student there prior to that. So I have a deep, deep attachment to this work. So they come up with this unit called BEACH, belonging, empathy, education, academics, community, hope. They were still working through the exact policy of it because it was 48 hours since they had heard about this, and they now had to figure out, how to move things forward. And there wasn't a ton of direction that was coming down from their senior leadership. So they come up with this proposal and they send it to the chancellor and the chief diversity officer. There is nothing else that is heard of this since. There was no feedback given. There was no ask to tweak. They were merely told that they were going to take into consideration what they had sent over. Now, was that consideration taken into effect? No, it was not. It was not at all. But I just want to make sure as we move down this timeline that it's clear. This wasn't something that people thought of later. 48 hours, 48, I can't do that math exactly, but by that Monday, Tuesday, they had a tentative plan of work that they could have worked from, that the university leadership could have worked from. May 17th, the African American Graduate Association asked for clarification about what UNCW would do now that the guidance had gone through. Not even that the Board of Governors had voted on it, because the Board of Governors hadn't even had their meeting. The reason I know this is because I asked a question as a member of the African American Graduate Association. All African American alumni of UNCW are members of this organization. I asked specifically before our meeting on a Friday, the meeting's on a Saturday, hey, I've not heard anything. I'm curious and concerned about what they're going to do, because from the way the policy guidance looked, it was primarily we are telling you that this thing cannot exist, but we are telling you and giving you the reins on how to move forward with this. We're not giving you this a strict guideline saying you have to get rid of the cultural centers, because that was not what was explicitly mentioned in that recommendation. So I reached out, followed by 3 or 4 other AGA alumni. When the president also reached out, they ended up canceling the meeting because there were folks who they didn't have a sense of what the university was going to do. We were told that they were going to wait for senior leadership to provide us with information about what they plan to do before we wanted to meet. That's what we were told May 17th, later that day. Almost a week later, the UNC Board of Governors voted to approve the university governance policy. So it's been a month since the directors have shared their plan. It has been a week since the African American Graduate Association have asked, are y'all thinking about it? And we were told basically, no, they hadn't necessarily. They weren't sure. Mind you, there had been DEI related stuff happening in Florida, Kansas, Texas. There were cultural centers in Texas that closed because of this policy. There are cultural centers in Utah that have closed because of this policy. Almost a year prior. And there was still no thought about no thought expressed to us about what was going to happen. So this is in May. The university at the time tells community members, tells donors, tells the general community, we're going to wait for university guidance before we do move forward. Our goal is to keep the centers and make sure everyone, has a job. We're not looking to do any type of reductions, removal of staff members. We're going to make sure everybody keeps their job. This is what is communicated, not just to the staff, but to the campus community, to community partners. I know for sure, at least for Black community members, prominent community members who were invited to the chancellor's house. And we're told we're not trying to get rid of it. We're not. We are just trying to make sure to conform to this as best as we can. It's May 23rd. June 28th, the UNC Board of Governors provides guidance. And we're going to go into that a little bit, specifically around policies around centers and center content, and a little bit around academic freedom. June 28th, UNC Board of Governors provides guidance. And it's a pretty thorough 4-page document referencing a lot of UNC policy. Like it's something that was sent out way in June, right? By August 1st, a plan is presented to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees are made aware because the only 2 meetings that were had prior to this and after this guidance was June 25th and then August 1st. They're planning on not doing anything until they get guidance, so they couldn't have given guidance, couldn't give a plan presented to the Board of Trustees, before then, so they had to have done it at this point in time. And this is, for anyone not fully aware of, as much as we talk about the chancellor, it is the Board of Trustees that really controls and dictates a lot of what happens on college campuses. So to everybody joining, just want to pause for a second, say hey. So this is August 1st. This is the Board of Trustees meeting. It is planned. During that meeting, it is conveyed to the board that they have to get rid of, that this is the plan that has to go through. This is what has to happen. We'll dig a little bit more into the BOT meeting in just a second once we get through the timeline. But just going back to between June 28th and August 1st, none of the center directors were included in any of the communication, any of the planning about what was going to happen. If you think about June 28th, essentially June 28th is just about a week before July 4th. So really, there's not a lot of thought probably going into that. So probably there is not really planning. If it's true that there was not a plan created prior to the guidance, I highly doubt in a week that that UNCW senior leadership was working on a plan, not right before a July 4th holiday. Having worked here, I can tell you that is not how they operate. So really, in less than a month, they have made these decisions with and no input from the directors. Also, the thing about July is typically when a lot of people take vacation, a lot of university personnel. So it does feel strategic that they've made this decision when a lot of personnel are out and not available. But so going back, August 1st, that's when this plan is presented. Up until this point, the center directors have no clue what's happening. Absolutely no clue. I cannot speak for Chief Diversity Officer Danya Roseborough as to what she did or did not know. I've not had a chance to reach out to her. But as far as the center directors and staff, no knowledge was had. No knowledge of what was going to happen happened. At Thursday, August the 8th, UNCW informs the former center staff of changes and gives them 24 hours to decide if they want to, if they want to keep their positions. That's essentially, not essentially, that is how long they gave them. 24 hours. 24 hours to first take in the fact that they are now not going to do the job that they love and have came here to do and are trained to do. This is what each of their specialty is to do this cultural center work, to do this identity work. At the heart of it, diversity, equity, and inclusion is making sure that everyone feels at the table. There's a sense of belonging. The cultural center work specifically, it can't exist without being a part of DEI. It is essentially, it can fit into that, but it's not the core of what it is. And now you are saying because of something that's not the core of what they are going away, the Office of Institutional Diversity and Inclusion goes away. And now we are splitting your centers down to one person. We are moving you arbitrarily into random offices. Sean Palmer, the director of Upperman, got moved to the associate director of Greek life, which despite Director Palmer being a member of a Black Greek letter fraternity, that is not, and he's conservative advisor, that's not his will. That's not where he chooses to work at. Elmira Segovia had a whole new position created for her. Dr. Segovia had a whole new position created for her. That is still, I believe they're still having job descriptions being made for because it was that new, even for the folks in the departments that they are going to. Brooke Lambert got moved to the rec center to do facilities and operations. Now, having known Brooke Lambert, Brooke is an academic. She is an educator, like a teacher. She is a scholar on queer history and LGBTQIA plus culture. She will tell you right now that that is not where she would even look to go around managing facilities and operation. That is not even in the wheelhouse. It felt real arbitrary. It appears that they just looked for associate director positions and placed them there without any consideration. There was no talk about, okay, here's what's going to happen. Here's what might be good for you. What do you think? What would work better for you? There was no talk about, let's just move you as a lecturer or work on getting you a spot in academic affairs teaching. Because every one of the center directors teaches. I'm not as sure about the Asian American or Asian Heritage Center. That was one of the more newer centers that existed post when I was at the university. There was no type of consideration taken, right? Given 24 hours to figure out if they want to do this or not. So going back to the timeline, the university, no matter what they say, the university at the top level, at the highest level, knew or had a skeleton of a plan in as early as April 20th. We can all do math, ladies and gentlemen. It is August right now. April 20th is 4 months prior, right? 4 months prior. In a meeting on Saturday with Eddie Stewart, a couple Saturdays ago, with Eddie Stewart, Vice Chancellor of Advancement, part of what he said the issue was is that the university, when they got the guidance, they just had so little time to, gather everyone together, from students, from faculty, staff. It happened so quickly. That's what was presented to the African American alumni graduates. But if you knew back in April, there was still time to at least convene some students together and be like, this is a hypothetical plan that we're going to work on. Now, this may not be the plan. We may end up reconfiguring a lot of this, but you had the time. You had the time, and you chose not to do it. Secondly, Zoom exists. Not trying to be funny, there was plenty of time in that July period to convey members of leadership, student leadership, past alumni, active alumni. There were still folks in the city that could have been convened to talk about, okay, how do we do this in a way that works? So no matter what UNCW says, no matter how much the chancellor attempts to pin this on the UNC system, even if that may be the case, which it does not look like it, it is still an egregious act and lack of care that was taken to these individuals whose jobs are meant to facilitate community. And it continues the feeling that UNCW is a hostile institution, and the W does stand for white. The only folks that they appear to support are white folks, and that's not even true, because there were plenty of white students, white staff members who found use and support and community in the cultural centers. There were white students who helped found Black-centered organizations in the cultural centers. A diatribe for another day. And then we are here where we are now. Again, 2 weeks ago, there was a meeting with not 2 weeks ago. That following on Saturday, because it happened on Thursday. That following Saturday, there was a meeting with AGA, the African American Graduate Association, and after that meeting, there was a call to meet with the chancellor and senior leadership. Stephanie Bloodworth, the UNCW, I want to make sure I get her exact title right. The chair of the Alumni Board of Directors, Stephanie Bloodworth, had asked to meet with the chancellor. Roger Hyman, the president of AGA, had asked to meet with the chancellor. Many members had reached out asking, when are we going to be able to meet with the chancellor? Since August the 13th, there has been no follow-up on that. There has been no other type of follow-up on meeting. It's been 2 weeks. Don't really think you can blame it on start of school, because you provided this policy that affected not only the cultural centers, but campus rec, academic affairs, student affairs, and Greek life in 2 weeks while they were in the middle of trainings and getting ready to bring students on campus. So I don't really believe that that is an acceptable excuse. And that's really where we're at. There has not been any questions that have been answered. We have not even had the ability to answer questions, so we have to assume and scoop from what we have been told and what we see. So that is a little bit of the timeline for, really what has gone down. What is consistent, what has been consistently asserted, is that this policy, and the reason these changes were made, is that the policy that was passed by the UNC Board of Governors and the guidance, it was very, very strict. This is what has been constantly communicated from the chancellor to the vice chancellor. It was very strict. It was very to the letter of the law that they did not want these cultural centers here. If we go to the guidance, the third section explicitly says that this policy does not prohibit cultural centers. Sorry, y'all, I'm getting messages in as we speak. But yes, this policy specifically says it does not prohibit cultural centers. And I am going to, apologies to IG, 1 second, system guidance. I'm going to share this information. I'll find it. Sorry. I'll share the information on IG, but the policy explicitly says that it does not prohibit. It explicitly says UNC policy addresses centers being operated on each of our campuses, and these policies remain in effect. Generally, centers are university sub-entities that perform a particular service or function on the campus, including supporting students, academic pursuits, employees, or the wider community. Centers can take many forms, and this policy does not prohibit centers categorically. Okay. The next thing it says is that centers will need to restructure their content. The centers founded or operated at administrative direction, such as part of a division of student affairs, will need to review and assess their postings, writings, program content, and other messaging to ensure that they comply with the guidance set out in Section 2 regarding neutrality. Now, this is I just want to really just hone in on this real quick. Just really hone in on this. If you knew, whichever knew, that the centers will need to restructure their content, why were no directors brought in to figure out what that meant? Regardless, if you say that the centers are going to exist and they're going to be able to do programs and whatever, why would you not bring them in at all? Why would you not have them be a part of the conversation about what that content will look like, about what are other places doing? These are the experts in their field, so they should be able to tell you, and they can tell you. They're just not dumb people. They can tell you where their content is and what would be able to be adjusted in order to comply with what has been presented. But you knew June 28th this was happening. Never brought them in. Never had any type of communication with them. And I don't mean communication as in we're working on it. I'm talking about, hey, this meeting, we're going to have a work meeting to figure this out. Eddie Stewart at the AGA meeting said the appropriate people were at the table. I'm still unsure as to who those appropriate people would be and why the cultural center directors would not be considered appropriate people. Particularly when Section 4 says some centers will need to restructure their content. Right? The policy, and now in Section 4, it also mentions that the policy clearly reaffirms the university's commitment to academic freedom, and a center that is a means by which one or more faculty members conduct, publish, or disseminate their academic work qualifies as an extension of the faculty's pursuit of teaching, research, and service. So again, going back to something that was mentioned before, had the center been moved into academic affairs, hypothetically speaking, let's dream and think for a second, because the university didn't. If we move them into academic affairs and assign a faculty member to be a part of that center in explicitly an academic sense, then the work of the center could live on. It's not saying that any social programs could not occur. None of the social programs that are presented by the centers, are prohibited from anyone. Anyone can come to a Black Friday. Anyone can come to a salsa fiesta. Anyone can come to a lot of programs that the Mo and Schultz has going on. There are certain programs that are meant to support certain students. There is Black Table Talk, which is supposed to support Black students. There's Mikasa, which is supposed to support Latinx students. But there are also programs that are meant to support other students of certain majors or certain other characteristics. It's not saying, and the policy goes in to say that it's not saying that you can't have things that are supporting them if it's connected to student success. We weren't just in here having BS sessions, yelling and screaming and throwing off Molotov cocktails. There were healthcare experts in a lot of these meetings. There were things that were meant to understand the individuality of certain populations and provide support to them. But anyone could come to any of the academic lectures. Anyone could come to any of the social events. There was never a person at the MLK celebration that UNC Upperman put on where you had to be swiped up and nicked and see how much percentage you had to be in order to get in. It was open to everyone. So it doesn't really make sense. None of that makes sense. None of it makes sense. So this, it really is, looking at the policy, there is nothing in it that really looks at why a centers had to go away. And particularly, I just can't get past the policy does not prohibit centers. And again, what UNCW will say is that they did not get rid of centers, and technically they did not. But it's a difference between changing your functionality, tweaking it, and making it non-existent, right? So if a lot of the stuff is supposed to be student-driven, if a lot of the programming is supposed to be student-driven and student-led, how are they going to do that? Each center, well, I'll just use my former center, the Upperman Center. Upperman put on 40 programs a semester. Some were academic lectures, some were social events, weekly social events. Some were exploratory alternative spring and fall break trips. I don't understand how you expect one person to be able to do this. Now, they claim that there's an ACES cultural programs committee that has been created. I've not seen that cultural committee. I'm not sure who was on that cultural committee. I really don't know. That's something that is not entirely, I would say, understood. But I'd also ask on ACES committee how many members identify as African American or Latinx or queer or Asian. How are they going to necessarily do this type of programming, particularly as students? Right? ACE isn't a separate professional programming board for students. It is literally student driven and student run. And students have class, and students, they're meant to be here to get an education. So to expect them to do that is unfair to the students. And to expect them to do that when they do not have the expertise, not that they're dumb, not that they don't know what they're doing, but even folks who do cultural center work, even novices, if you are not well versed in that world or well versed in the type of programming you're doing, you are going to do programming that is ineffective, that does feel exclusionary, and that doesn't continue the mission of student success. And these people who have trained, who have master degrees, bachelor degree, these kids are still getting the degrees, and you want them now to put on an MLK program that served over 1,000 people. The MLK program was going to be 40 years old this year. And now you want students to take on that level of responsibility? I will tell you right now, the MLK program is a highly publicized event. People are trying tooth and nail to get tickets to that, to a free event. And now you're going to put that pressure on students to figure out who to get, to figure out how we're going to work the logistics of it. Not saying they can't, not saying they can't be trained to do that, but you now want them to do that for every single center, for all of these spaces. Or if you don't, what you're saying is you don't want that programming for those students. And if you are saying that, you should just say that. So that's a little bit of the overview of the policy. I've shared it on my Facebook and YouTube, and I will try to share the link. I'm doing a couple shift around right now on my Instagram as well. But if you just type in UNC system guidance, June 28th, you will find from the UNC system their specific guidance. Now, what does this look like across the state? This wasn't just a UNCW policy. It's not like one day we're just like, this only applies to UNCW. How have other centers handled it? Well, for ECU, all the university's personnel-related units, so anything dealing with personnel, and that included their former diversity, equity, and inclusion unit, they were now consolidated under one department, the Department for People Operations, Success, and Opportunity. They don't have a chief diversity officer anymore. They have a chief people officer. I say this because it was conveyed in the Board of Trustees meeting that UNCW couldn't just change the name. They couldn't just change the name and keep everything honky-dory. They had to really just cut down. It was darn near draconian, right? But ECU has done this. They've changed just their DEI. We haven't gotten to the cultural center. The cultural center stayed where they are. Stayed staffed. Didn't change at all. That was fine. They changed the chief diversity officer to chief people officer, which a lot of corporations are doing. Having worked in a corporation, I remember they changed one of the HR leads into a chief people officer, and diversity and inclusion was included in that. For NC State, the campus community centers are comprised of African American Cultural Center, LGBT Pride Center, Multicultural Student Affairs, Women Center, and that's not right. Sorry, y'all. It's not on here. But all of that moved from the Office of Equity and Institutional Diversity into DASA, which is the Department of Academic and Student Affairs. So they did kind of what UNCW did. It went into student affairs and a little bit of academic affairs, but they kept all their staff. I just went and looked. They kept all their staff. Western Carolina kept all their staff. I just, before this call, called them, their intercultural affairs office. Picked right on up. There are different places in the university that have done different things. And for those who have done that, who have not kept these spaces, like UNCW, the ambiguity in the guidance is great because you can then just blame it on the guidance when in reality, you got rid of these spaces or you limited them in a way that made them functionally not that you feel like, well, we have to get rid of it because they don't think nobody's going to be able to no one's going to come together and ask questions about, hey, how are they doing this up there? How are they doing it down here? How are they doing it down there? Da, 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 da. We're too busy with our lives. But no. What these centers meant to us was something special. Y'all don't just get to do this and then toss it out the road. Okay. If you want to know more about what the what different universities have done, there it is. If you want to know more about what universities have done, you can drop them, or you can check out this link that I am submitting right here. And that is talking a little bit about what different UNC systems have done. NC State even, they renamed their former equity office twice. It was Institutional Equity and Equal Opportunity, and then people didn't like equity enough, so they were like, okay, it's Office of Equal Opportunity. Their cultural centers are still fine. Still fine. They're doing programs. They're able to function. They kept all their staff. They kept their budgets. We don't know what's happening with UNCW Cultural Center's budget. We don't know what's going to happen to their salaries. It's essentially going to be a slush fund to do whatever, right? So who knows? Maybe that money goes to student affairs, or maybe that money goes to student government, and somehow, in 2016, a student org brings down a presidential candidate, right? Speaking of that, that's a great segue. Anybody remember what happened in 2016 when Donald Trump won his presidency? Well, Latinx students were told to go back to Mexico. Muslim students were being bullied and had to literally go and find sanctuary in the cultural centers. It was a place where you could vent. It was a place where you could cry. I saw literal tears and be comforted by not only the folks there, but also the staff, multiple staff. What's going to happen now? Hypothetically speaking, in this upcoming election, what's going to happen now? right? These centers were spaces where you knew if some mess went down, you could go there and there will be people, multiple people there, right? We're not now overloading one individual with trauma. What's going to happen now? What could possibly happen now? Didn't think that through. Didn't think through at all, or just didn't care. That's really the only thing. So again, I kind of went over what happened across the state and what we have been told. The vice chancellor of student affairs is telling people that it was not their decision making. They just got here. They're not trying to tear anything down. They really aren't. They're really directing more of the responsibility for this onto the chancellor, and the chancellor is redirecting the responsibility onto the system. But we just went through 3, 4 examples. We didn't even get to Chapel Hill, which kept its cultural center at its full staff. Right? We didn't go over the fact that while they claim that like this happened over only just about a month ago, that they didn't have plans already in place. Suggested. You didn't have to go with it, but you had it suggested to you by experts, by people you claim to value, and you did not do anything with it. You just let them go with no type of contriteness, no type of care at all. You're telling that all this happened, and we're watching across the state that did not have to happen. And you won't meet with us to discuss why you acted the way that you acted. You're not having any accountability. You just want this all to go away. I don't know if you're waiting for the election and then you're gonna trace your steps. But at this point, it's too late, bro, big bro. Like there's gonna have to be some other type of changes need to be made because for a lot of alumni, I speak for myself, but also the legions of people who came before me, we don't come back to UNCW for homecoming because of the center. We don't give money to UNCW because of the centers. I mean, because of the university. We give because of the centers. And now there's like no reason why. Like people have said they feel more connected to the centers than the university as a whole. They enjoy their experience because of the centers and in spite of the university. Now you've gotten rid of that. And they might be able to say like, well, the students are fine with it. Yeah, but the students also don't know what they are not getting. They don't know that there's not going to be a Sankofa. They don't know that there's not going to be Black Friday. They don't know that most of the program is going to be is providing resources because a lot of the coordinators, if we go back to the position for the Asian American or the Asian Heritage, I was called Asian American, the Asian Heritage Cultural Center position, it's more about connecting resources and implementing initiatives that come down from anywhere else. It's not about doing programming. It's not about doing programming. I can show you the old documents. There was a specific requirement for programming. Essentially, they are making these spaces into spaces where people can provide direction to resources. And again, as we mentioned on the last one, what's likely going to happen, the expectation in my mind of what they're going to try to do, well, while I'm trying to mitigate all this, is to consolidate the centers into one, and then you're going to start getting some programming. That type of model is not going to work for UNCW. On a campus that has 3% African American students in person, it's not going to be the same type of output. You can't expect the same type of output that made these centers award winning, that made these directors award winning. Someone, Sean Palmer, that UNCW gave an award to, you dismissed, right? And to convey this idea that they couldn't have directors doesn't make sense if you're going to have someone over a director of multicultural affairs. Even if you're saying that you can't have any culture center directors, that doesn't make sense. That's nowhere in the policy. Nowhere else where anybody else has changed has it said they couldn't have directors. That doesn't make sense. Because why can you not have directors of those cultural centers, but you can have a director of an Office of Military Affairs, which has a space? It doesn't make sense. And they are banking on folks not asking questions. They are banking on everyone going, oh, that's just UNC white. They are banking on that. And that's why they're telling you just bits and pieces of it. Trying to wring their hands of it. And that's not what needs to happen, right? Kind of going back to my agenda. So since the last time we convened, and we're about 15 minutes left. We'll hop into the chat. Don't see a bunch of other uh, comments. See anything in here? Nope. All right. So what has happened since we last convened? The centers have had some programming. Different centers are operating in different ways. So um, it is more, again, there is no programming that has come out that has been, here is what we're doing. All the programming currently has been come to the center and we can talk, or come to the center and meet other students. That is very different than the work that used to be done. Very, very, very different than the work that used to be done. And that's what is annoying, and I will say transparently frustrating about this idea that the centers are still open. Right? They're trying to place a lot of the work on the students. They're trying to say, well, the students need to drive the programming. That is not consistent over any other area in student affairs. That's not consistent with the care office. I have good friends who work over there, right? That's not consistent. They do their own programming. They have their own programmatic thing that they need based off the students' needs. Yes, but it's not being like we're waiting for the students to tell us what they need and then we push through. It's like, no, we know based off on our expertise, this is what students need in terms of support. To do this would essentially be to turn the care office into having no program. That they're just there waiting, doing really nothing, and that makes absolutely no sense. It's not that you're not going to turn those centers into freaking uh, hotlines like, hey, I need help, where can I? No, that's not what cultural centers at their heart are. That's not what student support even is. How are you going to provide that support if it's just purely, okay, yeah, you can go here, you can go here, or come into the center and we will talk to you, right? That is a piece of what happened in the center, but that shouldn't be the whole shebang. That shouldn't be the whole thing that that is expected out of the centers, right? Nowhere does that. The health education center, yes, they have peer mentors, like a lot of spaces on campus, but it's not like they wait for the peer mentors to do the programming. They have programming that is pushed out of that office, right? I know that. I was there. UNCW, you're not gonna do this. You're not gonna sit here and act uh, like we don't know what we don't know. I was there. I've been to meetings. I've seen it as a student and I'm a staff member. There's nothing you can say that I haven't seen. There's nothing you can say that would make it seem like, oh, this is gonna be this way or this way, and you just don't know. No, y'all don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. You won't get to do that. But let's get back on track. So yeah, since then the centers um, have done their program, but again, it's mainly been resource, not even resource development, but helping to find resources and supply them with resources. The university has announced they are looking for a multicultural center director, a director of. Let's again, I'd like to get it as right as possible. Um, Multicultural student success and resource centers. And I do think it's important to note the name. A resource center can be different than a cultural center. They can be the same thing. There are many Black culture resource centers around the country that do what cultural centers do. But a resource center, if it's just to provide resources as opposed to provide any type of programmatic offerings. So they are looking to hire someone. They announced it for a multicultural student success and resource center position. And they expect it to happen. They fill it pretty quickly. It is more than likely almost 100%, 150% going to be internal. It's not going to be national search. They're going to look for someone in the office, in the university setting, to be that director. And what I imagine, what many will imagine, in my imagination, is that they're going to look to get one of the directors to do it. They're going to ask one of the directors to come back, and this is going to be the piece, the meeting halfway, the olive branch, is that they're going to offer them this wonderful multicultural. You'll be back in your center spaces. You're going to be back in your center spaces, and you'll be able to do the blah, 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 blah. That's what, man, please. I could be completely wrong about all of that. Could be wrong about everything. But I doubt it. I really doubt it. So that's what has happened. Again, what has not happened since then? No meeting with the chancellor, no other type of guidance around what happens with their salaries, what happens with their budget lines. Each center had about a $20,000 budget, comprised of both trust money and cultural arts funds. So basically, whenever the UNC system gets the budget, or the campus gets a budget, and then they partial that money that goes for cultural arts, that is student dollars, that goes to the centers, and that was used to be distributed among the cultural centers, based off programming needs. Sometimes it was based off of size, sometimes it was to give an even amount, and then you would get a little bit more as your programming dictates it. Nothing's going to be said about what happens to the money that used to go to the Office of Institutional Diversity and Inclusion and all of their salaries. No one knows what's happening with any of that money. There's probably, with everything combined, about $1 million to $2 million that's just kind of out there in the water that nobody knows where that is going. They're still getting it, but there's no thought about where that money is going. So we don't know where that money's going. We don't know where. I'm probably about to lose my IG, folks. Give me a second. Let's go ahead and make sure y'all are good. Again, y'all, this is me going through this as I can. I'm just one man. And if you have questions, please comment them, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Hopefully this is okay. Ooh. And yeah, let's go there. All right. So again, no idea about where the budget's going. No idea about where their salaries are going. There's no question. There's no answer about what does their programming look like. There has not been an answer on if there will be a Sankofa, or if there will be a Lavender graduation, or an Excelencia Latina. But again, if they hire quickly this multicultural, what's it called? Multicultural Student Success and Resource Centers Director, they'll probably do a multicultural celebration. They probably won't do Kente Stoles. They probably are not going to do Lavender graduation. It will be some very standard, run-of-the-mill certificate that is given to them, and it's not going to be as impactful. And that's if they do that, if they even have that ceremony. Because again, based off how they have hidden behind the lost IG. Given how they have hidden behind this guidance on just you get rid of the centers, it could be the same thing around, well, the students, haven't asked for a Sankofa because they don't always know if they don't know. Like, not new students. They haven't even had an introduction to who the center is, or what it even does, or what it can do at this point. No one's sure what they can do. Not even the staff is sure what they can do. They said the plan was to make a plan. That's what we were told by Eddie Stewart in the ACCA meeting. There was a plan to make a plan. So we don't know what. There's not been any announcement, and there's not going to be announcement in my mind. There's not going to be anything that is sent out um, about here's what it looks like. There's not been that. Everyone's just kind of moving along as if everything's honky dory and nothing's gonna happen. We don't know what type of meetings. Are there currently meetings happening right now to figure it out? Because if what Eddie said is that there's plans to make a plan, that means you're still figuring out other meetings currently. Who is in those meetings? You don't have a chief diversity officer anymore. You don't have a director anymore. Are the coordinators involved with the meetings? I highly doubt it. So what is happening? There's been no this the end wasn't we did this and now it is what it is. No, there is still a lot of stuff that's got to be situated, right? There is probably, if we were to be honest about what the programming looked like, there is somewhere in the neighborhood of I would say 50 to 100 and probably more programs that um, will be affected by this. There was the Excellence Project, which was or is a mentoring program for Black students. We don't know how long that will be able to be around. There is Mikasa that has stayed, but for the moment, because there's been no direction about it, right? They said some changes may happen with programming, but they refuse to come out and say what that looks like. Even if you just say the programming based off the guide, right? You wait on the guidance. So are you not clear about it? You had a month to apparently come up with this program, but there was nothing that was clear about it that you can't even say now. No type of communication. They've remained strategically silent. No conversation about budget. No conversation about salaries. No conversation about what's really going to happen with the cultural centers. Because I guarantee you, what's going to happen. But there have been at least 5 cultural centers across the country over the past 60 years of cultural centers. At least 5. The past 60 years of cultural centers in the past 20, 30 years who have gone from who have gone from ethnic specific centers to multicultural centers. LaDonya Wright at ECU, the Paul Robeson Center at Penn State, the Martin Luther King Center at University of Kentucky. But normally it was Black students who had access first, and so protested and got their ethnic specific centers, and then they got turned into multicultural centers. Say this, I have no issue with the multicultural center. I think there should be one multicultural center. I've said this before, and I'm about to beat a dead horse. You need that in addition to the ethnic specific centers. In a space where you have students that feel isolated, you need these spaces where they know they can go. And yes, they need to be able to vent about what's going on. And they need to be able to have direction and staff members to be like, all right, we hear you, we affirm you, and now let's figure out how we can make this a more welcoming and affirming university. To do that in a multicultural center, you're not going to have it's not going to be the same type of impact. And I don't think that alumni are going to be too happy to know that when they fought for expansion of center space, to know that they're not going to take that away. Because let's be honest, UNCW is not going to let the multicultural center have 3 different spaces. I'm a Seahawk, and that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Okay, they're going to take Central. That is what I believe is most likely. They're going to take Central because it already has gender neutral bathrooms. It's on the bottom floor. It has enough office spaces for all of the coordinators plus this new director. That is what's most likely going to happen. And then they're going to refurbish Upperman and the Mullen Schultz Center into something else completely. More study sessions, more study lounges, more resource offices. That's what's likely going to happen. Again, Manny doesn't know for sure, but we're pretty sure. So that's what I would say has not been communicated since we last met. Lastly, if I can get back to that, we're kind of at the end of time. We're about at 6:30 or 7:30 now. I'm just going to go back over to see if anyone has said anything on the chat. See, last time I couldn't see people I couldn't see people talking, but it doesn't look like it. So So we'll go ahead and just and shut it off here. What I will say lastly, what is being done is I know there are alumni that are meeting. Um, in addition to AGA, there are unaffiliated alumni that are meeting to try to figure out how they can support and what can be done to reverse this decision. Um, there are policy adjustments that have been created and communicated between some of these alumni groups. Um, I think that just they would want. So there are people thinking about it, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the very near future, um, there is some real action that has been taken that has to be taken because of what has happened with these centers. Um, so yeah, I wanted to hop on to give kind of a cleaner um, update. I think on the first one, I said that the offices were in academic affairs. They are located in student affairs. Um, but academic affairs is a lot better place for them to be, and they all do academic programming. All of them, almost a majority of their programming is academic. They have specific lectures. Upperman had 3 lectures, one relating to new professionals on Africana, presenting on Black topics, one on Africana Studies, a partnership with the office, and then the Indigo Blue, which was working on lectures around Gullah Geechee culture and heritage. So that's it for today, y'all. It's a frustrating place to be. It's a place where you don't want to say you're an alumni of the UNCW. It's getting to a place where we're being pushed with no answers, no communication, not even with the official organs. I'm coming to you just as an alumni, but the official AGA, they've not heard anything. These AGA pushes for UNCW just about as hard as anybody it has in the past to come to homecoming, and you can't get a meeting in 2 weeks, an hour meeting. But I know the chancellor has met with folks in the city. I know he's met with folks in the city. He's met with local folks in the city. I know he's talked with donors. I know he's talked with various individual staff members, right? And not donors of the center spaces. I'm talking about donors who are just like, what is going on? So it's frustrating. And all I can say is that if you are looking to support, reach out to me, message me on any of the platforms I'm on currently. And I'm sure there are ways to connect with people who can do good work. Bring your ideas, because at this point, if the university is not willing to bring any ideas to the forefront, then we are going to have to do that as active alumni. With that being said, it's 7:30. I'm gonna hop off, grab some food, get to sleep, and we'll be back at it in the mañana. In the morning. I mixed my morning and mañana together, but. Thank you all for hopping on, for all my people who were here. If you have questions, y'all know how to reach me. If you don't know how to reach me, find somebody who knows how to reach me. I know a lot of people. But yeah, thank you all so much, and I will see y'all next time.